But what does it tell us about the history of the Chinese authorities' evolving relationship with online communities and social media? Well, to help us, we're joined by Kerry Allen, who is the BBC's China media analyst. First of all, did the popularity of Sister Lotus, when it happened back in 2004, did it take the Chinese authorities by surprise?
It did, yes, because they didn't really factor in just how influential social media was becoming because, I mean, China has traditionally been extremely tightly controlled in its media environment, very much ever since China got the internet, which was May 1989. So ever since then, there have been tight controls online about what people can say and do. But social media was a growing platform. There were lots of blogs and areas where people could basically bypass the censors and be able to kind of rise as a figure, tell their personal stories. So being able to hear these stories for the first time on a platform was very inspiring to Chinese people and very exciting.
And when you talk about a Chinese social media star, you're talking about accessing a vast population. So clearly the authorities would be concerned about what is going on to social media at the hands of people who become very popular.
Absolutely, yes. And one of the things I've noticed is that in recent years, there has been this effort to step up socially responsible stars. So there was a report issued last year which was calling on more celebrities to be socially responsible. And there was a ranking put together of 100 celebrities that were very influential in China and how socially responsible they were. And only 8 people passed in this ranking. So the idea was that celebrities really needed to up their game if they wanted to maintain their fame.
Surely the Communist Party would put up its own social media influencers as a way of helping to keep control of the message that goes to the public.
Well, that is the case, but at the same time, they can't be fully controlled. So what we've seen in recent years are celebrities like, for example, the boy band TF Boys, who are almost like a Chinese equivalent of the band One Direction. They've become very influential. They do a lot with the state. They promote initiatives, for example, like, the smoking ban in China, in areas like Beijing. But at the same time, recently, one of these boy band members, Wang Yuan, was caught smoking indoors in a Beijing restaurant, and the government was very nervous about this. Because the idea now is that celebrities can't really have a dark past. I mean, even Jackie Chan, for example, who's one of the most internationally renowned Chinese celebrities, he still comes back for all of the big events in China, like the Spring Festival Gala, and he's put on a pedestal. But, I mean, he's had affairs in the past, and his son was, back in 2014, notoriously caught smoking marijuana, and for that reason, he still was one of these celebrities that failed this socially responsible test. New celebrities who are coming in have to be as clean as possible. They have to have no scandals in their past whatsoever.
You talk about this social responsibility test, but how have we got to this point? If you look back at the evolution of the authorities' relationship with the social media, were they out of control back in like 2004 in the sense that they didn't really understand how it could be contained?
Well, they were, yes, but also one of the things that's become more and more difficult is the growing platforms for people to use social media. So back in the early 2000s, blogs were very popular, and microblogs were starting to emerge as a platform. So Facebook in the West, China got Sina Weibo, for example, and it had something called QQ, which was very much like Windows Messenger. So these were the platforms that it was kind of recognized everybody went to those platforms. But nowadays you can have many more different mediums. You can have mobile messengers like WhatsApp, and China's got WeChat that people can use. And vlogging in particular, doing video blogs and live streaming has become increasingly popular. And China's really nervous about this because young people want to engage with these platforms and they want to use them. They want to do basically kind of, get an audience and become an online celebrity. But at the same time, the government is extremely nervous, full stop, about anybody having that level of freedom. So a lot of these new platforms that are emerging, they've got very, very long lists of what people can and can't do, a particular emphasis on what they can't do. Yeah, you've suddenly got now lots of platforms for people to live stream, but at the same time, the government is so nervous that it has basically strengthened its grip on what celebrities can do and almost made a threat to Chinese social media users and said, you really need to stay in line because we could punish you if you do anything bad whatsoever.
It must take an enormous effort on the part of the Communist Party to keep tabs on this.
It does, yes, and there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of online police who manually go through social media posts on different platforms and see if there's any content that they deem subversive. And what they've been increasingly doing is looking specifically at platforms and saying that they will fine them heavily if any content is found on their platform that the government doesn't agree with. So lots of different video streaming platforms have had this in particular, that they've suddenly been cut down on because people have been increasingly live streaming, trying to be provocative and basically trying to separate themselves from others in order to become popular. But at the same time, there's a fine line between what they can and can't do. And the government doesn't like anything violent or pornographic. So it's literally introduced very, very kind of, even slightly suggestive things like people wearing strap tops, for example. The government would frown on that and try to stop people from doing anything like this.
So what message does Beijing take from recent events in Hong Kong, for example?
Well, Hong Kong was a bit of a sticky issue. It came a week after the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, which is the biggest censorship exercise every year in China. There's massive attempts by the government to remove content from search engines, from social media platforms, because it outright denies that it ever happened. With Hong Kong, I mean, particularly the bill there was some mention of, but the idea that anybody could protest against bills that the Communist Party is supportive of, even if there are only 10 people. I mean, in this case, there are reports of up to 2 million people taking to the streets. The government doesn't like any images being shown of people protesting whatsoever. So once again, there was extensive censorship of pictures that show people protesting, and also terms related to the protests. So the words Hong Kong, for example. I mean, what happens is the government censors lots of individual terms, and it just builds a list of these over time so that people can't talk about these events ever until the government's got its own message on why these events happened.
Kerry Allen, BBC's China media analyst, many thanks.